right? Another class in Unit 3. I think if I counted right, it's 6. I've been gone for a little bit of it. So it says class 1. There you go. This is how behind I am. This is, I think, class 6. But these are the things. I did update this. So the things that we are going to be talking about is asking technical questions, what that kind of looks like, how to give good feedback. So this is where I'm hoping that there is a little bit more questions, because I'm just going to tell you what LaunchCode told me to say. And then I'm hoping you guys have questions so that I can have answers too. And then we will go into like project workflow, like the flow, writing the code, completing the user story, turning it into a branch, and then into a pull request. So many of the teams that I've popped into, if you were online and I was online, I don't know, some of you caught me and said hi to me, and some of you might have caught me but didn't want to interrupt, which is exactly fine. I'm just listening into groups to see where you guys are at, what you guys are doing, how you guys are communicating, and seeing if I can help out in any way. But many of you are right at the edge of doing that full cycle on a user story. So that's why we want to make sure that we're doing it and consolidate or making that more concrete in your mind what that looks like. And then I will go over something that LaunchCode does not tell me I have to, but I told you I was going to go over routing and React because many of you were questioning about how that works. So I'm going to go over that. So how to ask technical questions. Whenever you're a part of a team, you will have to ask technical questions. So some of the things that are usually going through your mind, so we're talking about not just the asking of the question, but the mindset of that, is oftentimes there's this balance of how impressive do you want to sound with all of this amazing vocabulary that you've learned, and then how much do you actually want to like convey the real ask. So I've had people that are like, they've heard other tech people talk and all they hear is all these now my mind is blanking on the vocabulary, so words that are like very specific to the whatever you're talking about. So like technical jargon. There we go. So you hear all of this technical jargon getting thrown around, and you feel like, oh, if I want to fit in with these architects that are talking this technical jargon, I have to do the same thing. But I can tell you for a fact, I have talked to architects, but I also talk to project managers. I also talk to business units. I also talk to clients. You have to vary your level. And in my opinion, instead of looking impressive on the vocabulary that you use, if you can convey what you're wanting in any vocabulary words, but you can convey your meaning, that's the most impressive thing. So you do not have to use very technical words as long as you are able to communicate what you're wanting. Now, also, so I'm dealing with internships at interns at NetSmart right now. And some of the things that we've been talking about is they want to be self-sufficient. They don't always want to ask those questions, but you have to balance that. Yes, I need you as somebody on your team to not bug me every 5 minutes. I need you to not ask me the same question over and over and over again. I need you to be at least somewhat self-sufficient. But on the other hand, I don't want somebody that's just sitting there and saying, well, they're going to think bad of me if I don't ask this question because, I've asked too many times today. That's not a thing either. Like I need you to get your job done. That's priority number one. But however much of that you can do on your own is amazing. So try to balance that. So, you can read this slide as I'm sitting here talking to, but it's talking about blockers. Whenever you get blocked on something, you need to get past that. So that's where, in my opinion, my first step is to Google. That many of you have said that. My second one is a rubber ducky. That's my second go-to every single time. If I get stuck, I'm going to Google, and maybe the Google throws out other keywords that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that now, and then I can keep going. Sometimes it's just, I need to take a step back and explain to somebody else what my problem is, And maybe that will help me just understand my own process, whether that's an actual rubber ducky or, to be honest, I have my go-to people. They love it whenever I go to them. They actually do. I'm not just an annoyance. And I go to them and I start explaining what I'm doing. And about halfway through my explanation, I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that now. So if I was working on your team, I would be fine if you would randomly come over to me and start explaining, helping with that communication, as long as you weren't expecting me to do a whole bunch of work. So as long as you're trying to do that in order for you to fix it, or the next step is to actually go to somebody and ask them, what is the next thing I need to Google, or what is the next thing I need to think about, rather than them just giving me all of the answers and more or less doing my work for me. How do I balance that? So the key thing here is you can't just stay blocked either. So you got to find that balance of when do you ask questions, when do you not. These are the steps that LaunchCode says to take when asking technical questions. You do need to give context, because if you just go to somebody and say, how do you do React routing? They're not even going to be able to help you because it's too broad. They need something a little bit more specific. They need a little bit of understanding what's going on. So you need to give a little bit of context to what you're blocked on. It might be React routing, but maybe if they understood why you needed it, there might be 3 different paths they could take you down, but depending on the context, they'll really take you down one of them. Spend some time online looking for folk. I literally copied and pasted this from LaunchCode. This is not how I talk. This is LaunchCode stuff. So spend some time online looking for folk who have experienced the same blocker. Yes, we all know that. So you are going to Google, more or less, did somebody else have the same problem? How did they fix it? Identify the steps that you've taken to try to fix the problem. This is that rubber ducky thing. That even though it doesn't say it, that's what it is. When you talk out loud, hey, I've done this to do this, I've done this step to do this, I've done this to do this, and you're actually saying it out loud, you're saying what you've done and where you want to go, sometimes you'll be able to just fix it on your own anyway. So not only are these steps to take while asking the question, these are preparing you to ask a question. And then share the code that you're working on. I don't always jump to the share the code you're working on. I think that reading code takes longer than somebody just explaining in their own words what's going on. So my first step is, if somebody comes to me, unless it is a very specific code problem, I want them to come to me with the whole picture. I want them to tell me what they've done before, what they're trying to do, and what steps they've taken to get there, and then what is not working. And we can address sometimes some of that holistically, and then I can just tell them the words to Google. And then they become self-sufficient, and then they understand, and then they can connect better, rather than if I start seeing the code, sometimes we focus too much on the code. So I would say only share the code if it is a very specific code issue, meaning you've coded it, you think it should absolutely run, and you're getting an error on line 32 and you don't know what line 32 error means. Yes, absolutely share the code, because it's specific to that line, and that might help the person help you. And then lastly, but I think we kind of talked about this at the beginning, be specific in your ask. Don't be too vague. I don't know what's wrong here. My thing isn't working, those things. So I'm going to read the questions. No bad questions, but there are pointless questions. Yeah. One of the generic, I'm trying to do X by doing Y, but Z is happening. It's a good format. I'm also one that I like templates when talking, but I think that people, if you follow templates all the time, you sound like a robot. So just put your personality in there too. So that's how to ask questions. What about somebody asking you a question and needing your feedback, whether it's technical or just a little bit of feedback? But we're gonna. So part of working as a dev, you're going to have to provide feedback to your teammates on the code that they've been working on. This is where you guys are at right now. I've heard some of you give actual feedback to not just processes and project level things, but some of you have gotten into the code and have given feedback on the code. That's been amazing. So you want to be able to give helpful feedback to your teammates. So these are key concepts. So in the blue are the key concepts, and then the white are the implementations of those. So one thing you want to do is make sure that you're explaining why you're giving the feedback. I think sometimes you just give feedback and people don't know how to relate the feedback back to what they were even talking about. So make sure that you're explaining the why. So you don't just leave notes that people should change something without offering context. You're explaining, on line 42, I would do this. But unless if it's way obvious, you're going to say, I'm going to do this because of this other thing. If you don't give the why, the person's going to keep doing the same thing that they are doing because their mind originally thought about doing it their way. And until they figure out why to do it a different way, they're still going to do it the first way. That's just psychology there. So you gotta give reason to switch. When you leave a note or talking through someone's code with them, walk them through why you think it could be done differently. So again, it's that, you wrote a for loop like this, I write a for loop like this. Somebody could say, well, they both work, so why should I switch to your way? I can just do it my way because it works. So being able to understand why they should switch. And then also when you're giving the feedback, you should always be listening too, because maybe the reason why they did something was good. So being able to either say, oh yeah, that's perfectly fine, you can keep doing it that way, or trying to find a compromise. In general, avoid using just when offering feedback. Why didn't you just do this? Comes across condescending and will potentially make folk defensive. In my opinion, we can get caught up on semantics. My suggestion with not just feedback, but in general, I build relationships with people. And so it really doesn't matter if I use the word just, because I have talked to them so many times that they know who I am, they know my intentions, and they know that I'm not trying to, throw them under the bus or call them out or any of those things. So more importantly than just this last statement, I would just build relationships with people so that you're having conversations that aren't technical all the time. You're asking about, who they are, what do they do outside of work. They don't have to tell you everything. You don't have to try to find out every little thing that they did that day, but just opening yourself up to caring goes a long way, so that whenever you do speak in a way that some people would get defensive, they won't get defensive because they know you. So just that's my 2 cents on that. I wouldn't worry too much about this last one as much as just be kind and caring about people, and you won't have to worry about if you accidentally offend them, because they'll know. So whenever you're giving, anytime you're communicating, clear, anytime you can be clear is good. You don't want the vagueness. So don't just point out, I don't understand this. I don't think we're supposed to use just, but maybe we are. I don't know. Point out things that are written effectively. Give them some guidance. Again, I just copied and pasted this from LaunchCode. I don't write any of this. The main topic there is making sure that you're saying, you're trying to guide them, going back to the why, but also the clearness. You don't have to give them exact directions on how to correct something. Depending on what type of role you are, in your guys' teams right now, you guys are moving so fast paced that because you are on a timeline, it might be fine with your current teams to just tell somebody how to do it. that you need it fast and out the door. When you're working on a team, it isn't that you want to go slow, but you got to figure out who's the person you're talking to. Like for me, I don't tell them how to correct something all the time. I don't tell them the exact steps. I give them the bigger picture so that they can go figure it out on their own. And that's more of a mentorship thing so that it sticks, whatever change they did sticks with them a little bit better. So I can, but on your guys' team, sometimes you do need to be more direct and just say, do step 1, do step 2, do step 3, and it will work. That's okay. Right now, you guys are in a fast pace. Be sure to say that just like giving feedback is the same as asking the question, don't be too vague, because then they won't know how to fix it. So definitely help them through that. Actionable, I'm all about actionable. I just got off a meeting less than probably about 15 minutes ago from work. And the last thing I end every single meeting with is what are our action steps? And I do the same thing whenever I'm giving feedback, is making sure that they have an action plan, whether it's just a high level action plan or it's a very low level, like very detailed list. That's depending on the situation, but I like making action plans with feedback and for meetings. Let them know what they did good on. I get where they're coming from. I think this goes back to the they need to know that you care about them and their process. And just telling them all the bad things can be overwhelming. On the other hand, when you get into the corporate world, most of it is business, and you need to go fast. And sometimes you don't have the time or luxury to pat everybody on the back. So you got to find that balance there. Definitely being caring, empathetic, all those kind of things. I don't know if you always have to tell them what a great invention they used 4 spaces in their code. I don't know if we need to go that level, but but do call it out. Like if you see something that's above level, you guys call out good work on each other, which I'm going to call out on somebody else here in the later slides. So definitely, if somebody goes above and beyond, definitely call them out. I think those are important. That motivates a lot of people to do the next step. So trying to find that balance. Yeah, so Micah, you're talking about ask how to handle a solution, how to handle like feedback if you actually know the solution. Yeah, knowing if you should give the specific clear solution or be a little vague just to point them. That depends on the situation. My suggestion is you're in your teams, give as clear, as specific as you want to, and then maybe you actually debate or try to figure out which one's the better, because they might have a different solution than you, and then you guys can find that out. But I think because of the short time frame, I would not leave anything vague right now. You guys need to get as specific as possible, so it's as clear as possible, so that you guys can just keep working. Which is the best place to give feedback? Somebody. So I like this question. So I'm going to take this question and answer it in several different ways. So the best place to give feedback, suggestions to somebody, I'm thinking me as a team lead. If I think that my whole entire team can benefit from an answer, I am absolutely going to call it out in a team meeting. If it's a situation where somebody asked me, I'm going to say, hold off, I'll give you the answer in our team meeting if it's quick enough or quick enough turnaround. And then during the team meeting, I'm going to talk about that, tell them what I think, get their feedback as a team, because I don't want to have those separate conversations everywhere. And I think some of you, I've done the same thing. If you've asked me a specific question, sometimes I bring it up in the lectures because I'm like, somebody else is going to benefit from that. So I need to let other people know that same thing. On the other hand, if it's just a quick feedback, you can give it whenever. I think, again, I always go back to the relationship piece. I know what I can say to my team members. I know which ones I can call out in front of people, and they are perfectly fine with that. And I know other ones where I shouldn't do that, so I go to them kind of more one-on-one, and we talk about things. So it's more that relationship piece, knowing who and how to communicate with your team. And that does come through experience. So those of you that have done customer service, you guys know, if you've worked with a lot of different people, you know that everybody has a different personality, and the best way to interact with anybody is to find out that personality and find out what they're okay with. On the other hand, as a manager, I'm always trying to get my people slightly out of their comfort zone. So I never want all of my team members to be 100% comfortable, because you do not grow unless if you're slightly uncomfortable. So that's what I'm always trying to balance. And again, I'll make a call out. If you guys don't like living in an uncomfortable situation like this unit 3 being chaotic and all this, maybe software engineering is not the best path for you, because this is how it is all the time. I mean, of course, you'll go through hills and valleys of like certain times it's really crazy, like right now, and sometimes it dies off a little bit, but it will always come back up. You will always have timelines. You will always have craziness. You'll always have conflicts. You'll always have all that stuff, and it will happen all the time. So get used to being uncomfortable. Now, okay, so then to switch from more of a general sense to team-specific sense, how do you get feedback? So on the team, so I'm talking about you guys right now, Unit 3, you're working on your team. How do you get feedback? Again, I do a lot of feedback if it was me, in the team meeting. So today, after lecture, you guys should be working in your group and working through things. You should be doing that, in my opinion, at least 3, but hopefully 4 times a week. In my perfect world, on Mondays and Thursdays, you are dedicating at least 30 minutes to sit down on the same exact call with all of your team members. You guys are already here. You're going to dedicate at least 30 minutes to do that. And I would focus more on the project structure and pull requests more than anything. And not as much, if you have time, you do, but not, those are the priorities. And then if you have time, work on actual code and how to help and all those things. But the time on Mondays and Thursdays, it's perfectly spread out, and midweek that you're working on your task list and your pull requests to make sure there's no merge conflicts. So those and then pull request approvals. So that's what I would work on Mondays and Thursdays. But I would spend 2 other days, either Tuesday or Wednesday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, again, meeting all together. You don't have to have your cameras on at that time. It should just be a quick check-in for 10 minutes of saying, what have you gotten done since the last time you've met? The normal stand-up. What have you gotten done? What are you planning on getting done? Do you have any blockers? Some people can do that without actually meeting, and they just type that stuff every day or every other day. And that is perfectly fine if everybody actually implements that. But you guys know how your team dynamic is already. Some teams just do better when everybody gets on a call at the same time. Some people are okay with being more asynchronous and just, Wednesday morning, I'm going to type up what I did Monday, Tuesday, and then what I'm planning on doing Wednesday, Thursday. And then if I have any blockers, I'm going to reach out. So it's up to the team on how to do that. So hopefully, Ryan, I answered that with the expectation. 4 all different schedules and responsibilities. So remember, twice a week should be Monday, Thursday. So you should be able to get 2. If you can come up with 2 more times, again, I would just do a 5-10 minute thing. If you can't, do it asynchronously, but you have to dedicate Wednesday between, you can do like a 4-hour time slot. I don't care what your time slot is. It's just based on the team. But for an example, you can say Wednesday between 8 o'clock in the morning and noon, you have to post your updates in the team chat or what in the Discord. channel or something. But you need to set expectations that everybody follow with constant communication. Because the fastest thing that happens is somebody doesn't speak for a week. They are a week behind because they didn't have that peer pressure on getting things done. Nobody else knows. Everybody expects that they've already gotten stuff done, but they didn't get it done, but they're waiting on them getting done. And if you just communicate all the time, people just know. So if you do get behind, people know about it and they can adjust. But if they don't know about it, they won't adjust. So high communication rate is always better than none. Yeah, so rubber ducking is just, there's a concept that you have to talk your problem out, like what you've done, just asking a technical question, but instead of asking it to a person, you're asking it to an inanimate object like a duck. Oftentimes your mindset on how you have to think about and communicate your problem to another person, just doing that process sometimes helps you find your solution. So the other question, suggest only going through and approving requests during meetings or through the week. I absolutely would like you guys to get comfortable enough to do it asynchronously. I mean, that's how the real work goes. Whenever I approve my peers' code review, and then I approve the pull request, I'm not sitting down with him and doing that. I'm just doing it. On the other hand, some people get confused and they need just a little bit more help. So it's easier to talk through those problems when you are with people. But absolutely, you don't have to. Yeah. Yeah, async is normal. Synchronous for the bigger problems or the merge request or the merge conflicts. Some of those you have to get two people on a call. It is very normal that you wait. That's waiting for someone else to review your code. So my thought process, this is my personal one. I usually have three tasks that are assigned to me at any given point. You do not want to get caught with more than three because the context switching that your brain has to do between those, you can't handle. And actually in this project, I'd only suggest two things at one time because you're not working 40 hours a week on it. So you don't have the time for the third one. But so let's say that you have two tasks. You should have a primary and a secondary at any given time. Your primary, once you think you have it secured and you make that pull request, it's somebody else's job to review that. And while you're waiting, you need to pick up your secondary one and start working on it. That is very common to do. So always have a primary and secondary. Many of you have already started doing this naturally because you're like, hey, I have to create this CRUD operation from front to back. So I need to do this task first, then this task, then this task, then this task. And so as you're completing the first one and waiting on a pull request, you're doing the second one anyway. So some of you have naturally started doing that. That's perfect. How frequent the conversation between team members? Yeah, it will be hard because you're not doing this full time. Some people may not have an update every single day, but again, that's where I'm saying 4 times. If one of your team members is not at least typing, like a message or on video at least 4 times throughout the week, you need to start calling them out. And so that just gets people messaging. That even if it's just a message, you don't really care what they say. You just know they're checking in. You know that they're working 4 times a week, 2 of which being Monday and Thursday. So those 2 are already dedicated. So 2 other times. That's my suggestion. That's not a LaunchCode thing. So I think I answered all those. Project flow. This is still copy and paste from them. Writing code to complete a story. So you guys talked about user stories and then turning a branch into a PR. Pull request as a request via GitHub to merge one branch into another. It's usually your feature branch into your main branch. Team members can commit on and review. suggest, whatever else on this pull request. It's a visual, like it's a public announcement to the team. My code is as good as I think I can get it right now. Go in and review it. Once the code is ready, the pull request is merged. So once somebody approves it, the code can be merged, and then your branch and your pull request could be closed. Some of you are not closing your feature branches. That is perfectly fine. I'm not saying that's a necessity. I like to keep some of mine for reference so that I know what I've done. So you don't have to cancel out your branches or close your branches whenever you merge, but you can. The code from the feature branch is now part of the destination branch, which is in our case the main branch. Once your code, why it says destination and not main, I don't know if you remember. I think Carrie did talk about this, and I briefly talked about it before. Usually in a production environment, you're not actually pushing to main or master, you're pushing to a development branch. And then the development branch then gets pushed up even further into a main or master. We are treating our main as our development branch. So that's why it's not a specific name of a destination branch. It depends on your team, it depends on your company. But for us, it is our main branch. I don't know if the get branch -d closes a branch, but I can definitely show you once I pull up GitHub how to delete those. You don't, and again, you don't have to delete them. And you could just remove them from your local and leave them up in GitHub. I don't really care. I don't think we're going to be eating up so much space in GitHub that GitHub's going to complain either. So you can do it however you want to. That is not something I would focus on if you're concerned about anything. So this is Cole, this is a great question. I'm gonna read this, but I am gonna answer yours. So I really like the question. Once the code for your feature branch is ready to go, you'll commit and push your code to your branch. I don't know why these are backwards and forwards, but I think this is actually should be before the other one. Then head over to your project's repo where it says branches. To right every branch is a button to create a new pull request. And then you're going to create that pull request, fill out the brief form describing the changes, and then once it's been created, it's an open state for team members to comment and or approve. So I'm going to call out Trevor. I don't know how he came up with this exact one, but this is actually near perfect for the first half of this. These are the typical Git steps. I just literally copied and pasted what Trevor had that some people have already commented on. So my suggestion, this isn't like you have to do it this way, but my suggestion, you need to make tasks, is what I'm going to call them, and they pop up as drafts on the project board. And then you're going to convert each of those drafts into an issue. You're going to move the issue from the backlog into ready, into in progress, because you're working on it. Remember, you're working on these issues. And then whenever you click on the issue, you can actually create a branch from the issue. Some people were still confused on that. I'm going to try to show that again here in a little bit. So I'm going to visually show what's going on here. I may or may not complete it all, but you can create a branch from that issue. That automatically creates your branch and ties it to the issue, which is what you're wanting. You're going to check out your new branch locally. When you hit this create a branch, it will tell you 2 lines to run. You just run both of those lines, and that will check out your branch. You're going to work on your code. There is a debate on how often you should commit. That's personal preference. I'm going to let you know, if I ever reviewed one of my team members' code and they had 17 commits for one pull request, I would probably go to them and say you're committing a little too often. I don't want to have to read through all that. Now, is it okay to commit 3 or 4 or 5 times? Sure. Do you know how many commits I actually finish up with before a pull request? 1. I squash and merge all of mine into 1. If there is a reason for a second one, meaning I have like a test case and then separately have something else, I will sometimes put 2 to differentiate the code that I'm writing, but mine is by section of code, meaning I might commit 7 times, but I know how to rebase to then push those all into one commit, but I like my code super tidy. Not saying you have to do that. So if you ever see me do things and you're like, how does he get away with only 1 commit? I know how to put them all together. You don't have to do that. Whenever you have committed all your stuff, you're going to push it up to your feature branch, and then you're going to create a pull request off of that feature branch. I think a lot of teams have learned this process so far, which has been really nice. It's the next step. And then, Mads, I'm going to answer that question as well. So both yours and Cole's, I have a different Q&A question, but we'll answer both of those. Okay. So this is what Trevor did not have in this thing. He said, once you open up a pull request, so I have changed a little bit of this. I think he was still kind of in the process of doing it and just trying to hammer some things out. So this is what I would do. This isn't just what you would do on your code base. This is reviewing a pull request. So now there's a pull request and somebody else has, like, if you push the pull, like if you made the pull request, you don't do this. The person that does this is the person reviewing the pull request. So you're not the person that pushed the code. So to review the pull request, to do like a code review, you're going to first look at the comments in the pull request to understand what this code should do. I think I'm going to share some people's stuff. So I found this. This one's an active pull request. I don't know whose group this is, but I looked at pull requests and I saw that there was an open one, so I'm sharing it. So on this thing, this is a lot of changes. Now, some of these are so minute that it's perfectly fine to be in here. Just know that for every bullet point, you could have potentially created a separate task and a separate pull request. And again, the way I decide is time. 2 things. Topic. Are all of these, maybe all of them are on the front end and all of them relate to the same thing, then that's okay to group them. So it's by topic and by time. I don't want to have my branch open for more than about 4 days. If your branch is open for more than 4 days, then it's getting behind. Other people have already merged stuff in, and there might have been already 3, 4, and if you wait a week, there might have already been 8 things already merged into main that's not in your branch, and that might actually conflict with your stuff now because you've waited too long. So you always want to be, my time frame is every time we meet on Monday and Thursday, you should have a pull request. Now, of course, it's never going to line up perfectly like that. You're sometimes going to commit, you're probably going to put a pull request on Wednesday, but then maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, but you're not waiting a full week. So if all of these changes would have taken a week to do, I would have made them smaller. I'm hoping that at least makes sense without going too much into that. But they do have to follow the same topic. I never want to see this many changes where half of it's on the front end and half of it's on the back end, and they're talking about a to-do list and a user all in the same commit. Never want to see that. They're all talking about users. They're all talking about maybe a structure. That's what this looks like, is it's like added a folder, added a folder, added a folder. So this is more of a structural thing. This is perfectly fine to group together. So I'm just throwing those ideas out there. So do you see, they created a pull request, right? I'm going to go back to my slide. Review the pull request by looking at the comments so you know what they should do. If you do not fill out this pull request in a way that somebody knows what it's actually doing, shame on you. So I need this to be able to actually review your code. And I think I've even seen some people say, what is this supposed to do? Call your teammates out. They need to document what this pull request does. So once you know what it's supposed to do, this is what I suggest because of my years of experience. This sometimes takes a little more time than what people want to do, but it saves us the headache of having bad code in main. So I'm just letting you know, these are more processes than some of you. The next thing, glance at the Files Change tab. It says glance. It doesn't say review their code there. It says glance to see what has changed. So I'm going to go here, and there's 15 files that have changed. That's a basic change. They're commenting this out. They're importing some new things. They're getting rid of the standard code and putting in some components, putting in a picture, some more CSS. Do you see how fast I'm going through this? This is exactly how fast I would go. I'm not looking at every line by line. I'm just looking at the structure to see if I understand it. They've added a nav bar. Okay, they added a nav bar. They added routes. That's fine. They've added an account page just as a placekeeper. That's perfect. Okay, so I know the structure here. I don't see anything too concerning. That's what you're looking at when you're glancing. It's just looking at, do you even, like, does some of this stuff, like, if I'm doing a, this says daily report. If we talked about doing daily reports and somebody put in a monthly report here, and we never talked about that, that's the kind of stuff you're checking right now. Like, you're checking, does it even make sense with the project that we're doing? Are they, is there anything crazy? After I've just glanced to see what's changed, so I understand what they're doing on a business level, like a user experience level, now I'm understanding what the code is doing. Above the Files Change tab, you can actually grab the branch name. So right up here at the top, it tells me that this person is wanting to go from that's their feature branch into main. So I'm going to hit this button right here, and that copies. So if I paste this somewhere, you can see that it copied that. You want to copy that, and on your local, you need to check out that branch. So you need to do a git checkout and then paste that branch name. This is where a lot of you just look at the code and you're like, oh, it looks good, approved. If you do that, you are just as guilty as the person that made the code when something breaks. So I saw on somebody else's team, they're like, there was a lot of code change. I think everything's good, so I'm going to hit approve, but will somebody else approve it as well so that we know that it works? That's great. The more team members that look at it, the better. But on the other hand, I would never hit approve if I wasn't confident that it did not break something. The way that I do that, on my local, I check out their branch. I actually run that code locally. And if I can't get it to run locally, I ask the person, this isn't working quite right. What's going on here? Can you help me work through this? And that's where you guys can get on a call or chat back and forth. Now, I will tell you some things that happen. You might have to run npm install on the front end. If you changed any services on the front end, I saw this import of React Bootstrap. If you don't have locally this React Bootstrap, you're going to have to run npm install. If you don't have React Router DOM on your local, you're going to have to run npm install. So anytime I see new imports, I just always run npm install. And then on the back end, on the Java API side, sometimes they might change the model, and anytime they change the model, you're going to have to clean up your database. Whether that is somebody posted, instead of doing the update, they did the create in the properties. So what that does every single time in your JPA properties, if you do create, it actually removes all the tables from your database and re-implements them back in with the new structure. It doesn't look to see, oh, do you already have this structure? Is there something I can just change to make it? No, it removes it and puts it in there. And this early in the process, a create for that would probably be fine because you never have to worry about it. Once you actually put data in, when you do the create, it will erase the data that's in your database. So you'll want the update later on, but you do need to check your database. Maybe that's the problem, just because of some changes. If it doesn't work, you need to communicate back to your team and that person, and do not approve that until it works on your local machine. If it does work, what you want to do is you're going to hit this review changes, and you're going to hit approve right here. Now, it is up to the team on how you want to communicate back. I am somebody that, instead of doing a comment or request changes and putting a comment here, I will do this when my comment is for the team as a whole. That's what I usually use this for. If it's a comment to the one individual person, I'll put that in my different chat, whether that I'll message them privately or I'll put it in my team chat. But I usually handle those separately, because maybe I'm wrong and I don't want my comment to be just out there. Maybe I did something wrong. So I'll ask them, hey, I didn't get this to work. This is what I did. Can you show me what you did to get it to work? You know, those kind of things. And I'll ask those on the side, not in this public forum here where everybody can see and it gets saved forever. That's just my suggestion. On the other hand, if it's something, let's say that I can get it to work, but I had to do one of those things like run npm install. I might actually run a comment and said, I had to run npm install to get mine to work. And then separately, I would do the approve and hit the approve. That comment in the pull request would then be there for future use, so people can see what you did. Just throwing out ideas. None of these you have to do. A good question on this: are bullet points a standard rather than a couple paragraphs? That is my standard. But that's personal preference and team preference. But like Lori said, I think it makes my brain happy too. Hopefully that makes sense on the not what to do after the pull request, but the actual pull request. When you are doing a code review, these are the steps that I would take. Now let's say, and then, okay, so for the last one, I left this open-ended. In the professional setting, usually it's the person that made the pull request that then merges it. And the reason why, if there is a problem with the merge, if there is one, not saying that there usually is, there's usually not, but if there's a problem with the merge, it's usually the person that has already been dealing with that code and those commits that fix that. So that's just tradition. If you guys as a team want to say whoever approves it, because we need to move faster, whoever approves it, if the green, because once you approve it, this thing here should turn to green. And if it is green and your team says, once it turns green, anybody can push the merge, I'm fine with that, as long as you guys communicate that. It's just, in my realm, it's usually the person that creates the pull request. So that's why I said someone, I don't care. All right. This is a great question that somebody already asked. So after merged into main, here's the caveat. If you are not, so let's say that Brett pushed something to main and I'm on his team. I need his changes in my branch, my feature branch. They're already in main. Everybody's approved them. They're the good commit. My stuff still needs to be tested, reviewed, and done a pull request on. So after the pull request gets merged into main, what should I do? And there is a happy path here if you're not working on the same files. So if your files and the new files that went into the main branch are different files, it's a super easy process. I've never had anybody really mess this up if you just follow these steps. So after it gets merged into main and you know that you're not working on the same files, you're just going to add the changes into your feature branch. The first thing I do, I don't pull that in as soon as possible. What I do is I get to a good stopping point with my code and I do a commit. Anytime you do a lot of Git stuff, with uncommitted changes, weird stuff happens. Sometimes you lose them. Sometimes there's conflict. Sometimes it says, hey, do you want to stash these? Hey, this thing won't work, whatever else. I always, whenever I do get status, it should say that I'm updated or current or whatever those wordings are. So I always, before I do several git commands, I always commit my code. So once my code is committed, and so I don't have any like loose code out there, this is what I do. I do a git fetch. What that does is on my local, it does not know that things have changed. So a git fetch goes up to GitHub, goes up to the remote and says, hey, what changes have been made? And when you do this, you should see in the console, hey, there's been an update to main, or there's a new feature branch that somebody made, or whatever the changes have been since the last time you synced with Git. When you do a git fetch, it'll tell you those, but it does not bring them down to your machine. It just tells you about them, because sometimes you don't want to bring them down. So I usually do a git fetch just to see what they are. And then if I am on my main branch, maybe I need to change that. Then while on feature branch, hi. So while I'm on my feature branch, so the git fetch, it doesn't matter what branch you're on, it's just going to pull down it's going to pull down that there are changes so that it knows about them. But then while I'm on my feature branch, I'm going to run git merge, and I'm going to do origin/main. That means my remote main. That's not my local main, because remember, git fetch does not bring down those changes. It just tells me about them. So I want to actually merge in the remote version of main. And if you leave it just like this, it'll say, well, what branch do you want to merge it into? If you're on your feature branch, it will just bring it into whatever branch you're currently viewing. What this does is it merges because hopefully your feature branch and main branch were the same at some point. It will know, because it will link up the commit IDs from both, and it'll say, oh, all of these commits are the same on both, but these ones are different, and it will merge that into yours. So it'll take the new commits that you don't have already, and it will merge those into your feature branch. So I'll just tell you, I like separating these two, the git fetch and the git merge. I do, because I have more visibility and more freedom to do what I need to do. So if I do a git fetch and I see something's weird, I know it right off the bat. So I separate these into a git fetch and then a git merge. You could do, if you're on your feature branch, if you do git pull origin, instead of it being origin/main, it would be origin-main. This will pull main and merge it into wherever you're at. So if you're on your feature branch, it'll pull it in your feature branch. So that's the code that technically is a shortcut. I'll be very honest, I rarely see developers doing this one. I see them doing git fetch, git merge. Yeah. Yeah, so a great question. So what happens with my local main? Here's the crazy thing. I never care if my local main I ever run on my machine. Again, whenever I take my feature branch, that should have main in it plus my code. That's what I care about locally. Whenever you are demoing your project to somebody else, that's when you'll want to do a git fetch, and then you'll go and switch your branch to main and just do a git pull. And a git pull, if you don't put anything after it, it'll go to the remote branch that you are on. So if I'm on main on my local, it'll know that I'm on main. It'll go up. It'll take the origin main and override or pull down into my local main that. Yeah, what's weird is if you run this get pull origin main and you are on a feature branch, it actually will not change your local main. It only changes one branch at a time. Yeah, origin is remote. Yep. Again, if you over update, there's nothing wrong with that. I never am on main. Even whenever I develop. Well, okay, a little bit of caveat. Remember, in a production environment, my development, I have to recheck and do what we call regression testing. And I'm not testing for one specific thing. I pull down my develop and push it up and make sure that it works as a whole and do all of my old testing to it to make sure I didn't break anything. And then I actually push that up to master. So remember, I'm taking my develop and pushing it up to master. That's why I do in my job pull down develop, which remember we're treating develop like your main. But that's because I'm doing the next level step that you guys are not doing. You're not doing releases and that kind of stuff. So if you have a development branch, sure, you can do that. Yeah, so this isn't origin and main alone, it's just a space, and that's because this pull command needs two different like parameters to know what to do. So get pull, if you do get pull with no parameters, it assumes origin and it assumes whatever branch you are working on right now. So if you do get pull with no parameters, it does that. If you do get pull, if you have it doesn't like just one parameter. So if you do get pull, it needs to be either 0 or 2. That if it's 2, you need to tell it where it's pulling from and then what branch it is pulling from. So read documentation about that. Yeah. Reading the questions again. Those of you that are frustrated a little bit about, hey, I've been doing this a different way, way longer way. It's a little frustrating. This would have been so much better to know, 2 weeks ago. Here's what I can tell you. Get stuff specifically. If you don't do it the wrong way, it will not stick. You will always use your cheat sheet on the side if you're always doing it the right way. When you mess up the get stuff, that's whenever you learn it for life. So just know that me as a teacher, I am not frustrated that you guys didn't understand everything ahead of time, because some of the struggle allows you to more permanently secure that in your mind. So I missed this one before, but I'll at least bring it up. So Zach said, I read that it's better to run get merge continue after resolving a merge conflict rather than committing again. Can you elaborate on that? I think that as long as your code works, you just do what you need to. That's how I'm going to preface most things. With the merge, oftentimes, unless if you do like a fast forward merge or other types of merge, which I'm not going to get into, there's so much, there's a rabbit hole we can go down. I'm not going to, just like rebase. Somebody was asking me about rebase. You Google rebase. I'm going to show you the most standard ways. Some teams never use rebase. I explicitly use rebase. So it's not something you absolutely need to know, but once you know how to do rebase, it's so powerful, especially with the interactive. So if you do rebase-I and Google that, I do suggest that for those of you that want to learn more about Git, that's my favorite, is an interactive rebase, because it gives me all the options. But with merging, whenever you merge, oftentimes it will put a new commit in there that you have merged. It's just documenting you merged this thing in there. If you do a fast forward, it does not put that extra commit in there. It just throws your commit in, but it doesn't make an extra one. And so whenever you do a merge conflict, not only does it want to do the merge commit, but it wants to do the alteration that is the difference between your code and the merge code that is creating the conflict. And so it does not matter if that gets committed as a separate commit, or if you do a continue where it kind of squashes that as it commits. It's just an extra line item on your commit history. And for your guys' benefit, that is not something you want to worry about. Again, if by the end of this project you have 2,000 commits because you are committing every hour after every line of code that you did, versus you having 20 commits because you squashed everything, one does look nicer, but as long as the code runs at the end of the day or at the end of the project, that's what matters. So don't focus on how many commits you have. Don't focus on those things. I'm telling you that you can think about them, but definitely don't focus on them. Get your code working, get your team collaborating, get your features out the door. That's what's most important. And you do need to use Git to do that, but there are so many different ways to do Git. I'm just showing you one. And if you find a different way that works for your team, I'm perfectly fine with you using it. I would like to know what it is just so that I have another reference, but yeah, that does it. I'm not too picky on that. Let me see if I missed any other ones. Yeah, you can do a git pull rebase. Yeah, I'm just, again, Google that stuff if it makes sense to you to use it, but if not, just stick to the basics. Okay, so Rebecca said, looking for a way to keep my fork in sync. I never fork anything. I am working in my code base. So forking is whenever you want to steal somebody else's repo and then start doing your own stuff to it. And then the reason you fork it and not just like bring it down and then push it up and you keep that connection is not the way that we're doing it. It's the other way, meaning let's say that let's say that somebody made an original application and I fork that original application. The reason I keep it as a fork is when they update their stuff, I can go regrab all of their cool new features and pull it into mine. That's the direction that a fork should go. I don't like the fork going from yours back into the other one. Yes, that's possible. Yes, people do it, but I don't do it that way. If I'm going to work on the original repo and make pull requests, I'm just going to do it in the original repo. So my suggestion, if you made forks, I wouldn't do them. I would redo your stuff without the forks. Oh, Hall already said something to that. I'm not reading all the way down. Okay, so and this isn't just for Rebecca, but she's the one that's like, I'm worried that I'm going to break some. Here's the cool thing. I am 98% sure that I went into every single repo that is attached to LaunchCode's repo, not your forked version, because I don't have access to that, nor do I want to, but to anything that's in the all hubs, LaunchCode, whatever. I went into all those repos and made sure that I made a rule set in GitHub that you cannot push to main. Now that wasn't originally set up. Some of those were originally set up, but I went in on Monday and made sure that everybody had that rule set on there. So per Monday, nobody can push to main. The only way you push code to main is through a pull request. So if you're worried about accidentally breaking something, the only thing you're going to break is your feature branch. You will not break main. if you break main, it isn't just your fault, it's whoever approved your pull request's fault as well. There's two people you can yell at if main breaks. So just keep working on your pull stuff, do everything to your feature branch. Yeah, if you don't understand rebase, don't worry about it. Some of you are having some fun. Sorry, I'm finally catching up. All right. Continue asking questions if you have them. I want to go to the Q&A, which I think this is one of them. I think these will answer the two questions above that I said, hey, I'll answer later. If it doesn't, re-ask your question. I can't remember. I told two people that I was going to answer their questions later. Okay, so can we learn more about how to rebase in GitHub? So this is separate. So I'm not going to teach you how to use rebase in GitHub. I just copy and paste the question. The separate part is my team has 3 branches. We'd like to push one branch to main. And then if you understand it, you need to rebase. So again, this is the whole reason I did that merge thing. So I want to state this again because it is something we need to talk about over and over again. Let's say you have 3 branches. Hold on. Let me do something crazy. Okay. Actually, I'll do this one. Okay. So let's say this is your main branch, right? So let's say your main branch already has 14 commits, right? I'm usually you would say a specific commit number, but let's say they have like it's on commit 14. And so the first thing that happens is I wish I would know how to use this. We make this feature branch. And this is going to be so we made this feature branch off of issue number 22. From this same main, we made 3 branches. I think this is iterating what you're talking about. I'm going to make these just random numbers because it really doesn't matter. Like, these are the issue numbers that we decided to work on, and these all committed to main. But now we have actually done the 3 feature branches. Our 3 teammates are ready to get their commits up here. Commits cannot be done at the same exact time. I think that's conceptually a lot of people understand that I can't just say, okay, all 3 of you go up there. We have to have an order. The order does not matter if you're not working on the same code, meaning the same exact file name. And to be honest, you can even work on the same file as long as it's not on the same lines of that code. So if you wrote on lines 1 and 2 of a file and somebody else wrote on line 102, you're not going to get any merge conflicts with that. It's whenever somebody writes on line 20, 21, 22, and then somebody else writes another set like on 21, 22, 23 or something, and they're really, really close, then Git doesn't know, well, because these are coming in, which one really goes where, and it has a conflict. So as long as they're separated enough, usually there's no problem. But let's say that there's 3. You have to pick one. So I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to say, hey, this one now needs to go back up. And this is going to be the first one. PR number 1. Now, you could do a pull request for all of these at the same exact time. It does not matter. But whenever you do a pull request, if this feature branch can be easily merged into this, there will be a green thing. I think it's green, but it'll say at the top of the pull request, can be merged into main. It will tell you that. If you see when you make the pull request cannot be merged into main, that means that main has a commit that your branch does not have. And you're going to go to your local and you're going to do get merge, get fetch, and then get merge origin / main to pull in main's commits into your feature branch. So that's what you're going to do if you don't see that. The problem here is, let's do all 3 of these. So this is, oh, I just wanted to. So this is pull request number 2, and then this one's. So let's say that we did we all finished the code Wednesday. We just all did. We all finished the code at the same time. You, no matter which PR number it is, you do have to order them in a way that you want to. It does not matter the order again. It just matters that you do, as a team, come up with the order. Whichever one's the first pull request. So I'm saying I, as a team, this wasn't because this was the first pull request made. It was because we as a team decided this. It's the first pull request made. This one you just merge. So this can be approved and merged, right? That one's easy. The problem is these other 2 do not have this commit. Let's call it commit number 31. I don't care what it is. So this commit of code is not on these 2, and I need to get them on there. You're going to go through the same process just very quickly. What you're going to do is you are going to merge this in. So this right here as a whole. Yeah, I don't even know how to do this. So commit number 31 is now inside main. And it's inside here because we merged it. Before you can do this second pull request, before you can do the next one, it doesn't matter which one. Before you do that, you need to run get fetch, get merge, origin, main. That's what you have to do. Once you run this, you'll go back to your pull request, and at the top, it'll actually say, hey, now it can be merged into main. If you do this pull request and push it up to main, and then go to the second pull request, there should be a red flag there that says, this cannot be merged into main. And you guys know the reason. It's because this has a new commit that this one doesn't have. So you just run the get fetch, get merge, origin main, refresh your page on GitHub, and it should say now it can be merged into main. The only other caveat to this, anytime you mess with this code, it will remove the approvals from your pull request. I'm going to say that one more time so you guys, let's say that I went over here and I pulled this stuff down and I made sure that it worked and I approved all 3 of these at the same time. I was really fast that day. I pulled all the stuff down. I approved them all. When you rechange this to add this commit 31 into this one, you will have to reapprove the pull request. After that, though, you just hit the merge button. So now commit 26 is on this one. So now it's just gaining all these commits. Well, this one now you need to bring down both of these. And that's why I wouldn't mess with this third one until after you do this one, because if you wait until this one also gets merged into main, then you just rerun. You rerun these commands again. It brings down these two new commits on this one. It turns green again. You push it up. Any questions on? Hopefully I explained that at least as a high level. Yeah, who's doing all these commands? I would say, okay, these things like this is where I would, if you can wait until Monday or Thursday, I would just do these as a group. That's what I would do. You don't have to wait until Mondays or Thursdays, but if anybody's getting confused and there's 3 pull requests all at the same time, I think it's better just to hop on a call and just get it done. As a call out, another one of the Kansas City groups met in person yesterday. I was fortunate to be able to also go, and that's what we did whenever we got together. They were asking, how do we do this stuff? And so I walked them through this same exact process yesterday. So at a big company, yeah, you're waiting your turn. Yeah, it depends on the team. My old team was pretty fast, meaning I would make a big announcement to the group that I have a pull request, and what the first person that had time available, like they were working on their code, they're not going to stop what they're doing at that point and go look at mine. But let's say like lunchtime, we did a lot of pull requests. At the end of the day, before starting something new, we would do pull requests, or at the beginning of the day. So oftentimes there's at least 3 times during the day in a work day that you're already turning your brain off of the exact code that you're working on. So then you can go spend that time looking at somebody else's code. So at least 3 times, but let's say I finish something at 10:30, it's not lunchtime yet. I would normally start something, but if there's a pull request, I'm going to go look at it. If there's any more urgent ones that need to get merged in faster, we talk about those during stand-up, and I'm going to say in stand-up that if anybody sees this, it isn't if you see it, I'm going to announce when this code gets done and it needs to get merged in to be tested as fast as possible, and we just talk about it as a team, somebody needs to look at that as fast as possible. Somebody usually does. Oftentimes, your code is not so important that it needs to get checked within the hour. And then also this teaches you, you do it right the first time, because if they have to come back and say that your code's not good enough, then you have to context switch again from what you're working on. You remember how I said primary and secondary tasks? Well, I'm working on my secondary task. Well, if somebody has a problem with my primary one because they gave me a code review that was bad and they're saying, hey, you need to fix this, now I got to context switch again, and then I might forget what I was doing on my other task, and then it gets a little messy. So my suggestion is only working on one at a time, and what you'll get used to is you will do one so well that you're testing it yourself so much that the approval process is just there. It's helping you get better because there might be some improvements that you need, but it's really just to validate that you did everything you needed to. And you will make mistakes. You will make spelling errors. If you approve a spelling error, that's, again, 2 people's fault. Look for spelling errors when you do code reviews. Yeah. Yes. So it depends on how big the team is. On my previous team, we just needed 1 approver. But to be honest, I had a lot of veteran people that were detail oriented. So 1 approver is fine, but on a team right next to me, their team was about 50% more. So we had about 4 to 5 developers, depending on the day. And then they had about 7 or 8. So all of their pull requests required 2 people. Also, my team ran where we would push code and it would get deployed to test as soon as we pushed it. We had a pipeline, a DevOps automated process that would, as soon as I pushed the code, it would get into test. As soon as somebody pushed the code, it'd go into test. So you're having all these code automatically in test. So then our QA people were able to test them so fast and run automate. We had a lot of automation ran to it. We were a little bit more confident in just one approver is fine, because if it's not fine, our QA or our automation tests would catch those. Where on this other team, they didn't have as many automated, well, no, they had a lot of automated tests. Their automated tests took 1.5 hours to 2 hours to run. And so they didn't do it after every commit. They only ran the test midday and evening. And so that's why they needed 2 people, because if instead of running that after each commit, they would have a collection of 8 or 10 commits. And then if one of those broke, then they couldn't push the whole lot of 8 to 10 commits. And so they're like, this sucks if we mess up. So they were like, we're going to make 2 people look at this to double our chances of it going incorrectly. Yeah. Yeah, and it would always suck. Like, you're almost done, and then it's lunchtime, and the code starts running, the thing runs, and then you push your stuff afterwards. But then you got to wait another 5 hours before you know if your stuff runs. I like my team's approach better. I was on a very good team, a development team. But I got off. I didn't get off task per se, but I went really in depth. So instead, does that help if you have 3 branches and I would do merging? I would not do rebase unless you get used to rebase, but that's something I'm not going to teach as a whole. So I think this was one of the other questions. So what's like the relation between an issue and a pull request and tasks and all these things? What should be the relationship between them? And I think I already went over a lot of this of like, you need to break each user story into as many small tasks as possible. That's what my suggestion is. If you can combine 2 or 3 or 4 of those tasks into the same issue, into the same task, and then in GitHub, it's an issue, and you can get that done in a reasonable amount of time, meaning 3 to 4 days or less, then that's what I would do so that you don't have 4 pull requests. The key is for every feature branch only has 1 pull request, and it only has 1 issue. So that's a 1-to-1-to-1. 1 issue means 1 branch, which means 1 pull request. So you do not want to have 1 issue going to 2 different branches. You don't want 2 different branches going to 1 pull request. You don't want 1 branch going to multiple pull requests because you had different commits in there. It's very linear. You create an issue, and whatever that issue is going to solve, you put into your feature branch, and then once you are done solving that, you make 1 pull request. That's how it works. I think the original question here, though, is can you combine tasks, meaning can I go ahead and do the repository, the controller, and the model all in 1 pull request, into 1 issue and into 1 repo, into 1 pull request? Absolutely, you can combine tasks, because hopefully those 3 things do not take you more than 3 days to do. I'm still going to show you React routing. That's not in my PowerPoint stuff because that wasn't from LaunchCode. Other than that, though, yeah, there are ways to do it as long as your team's good with it. Whenever it comes down to it, if your team is working as a team, and at the end of your project you have a running MVP, it does not have to be amazing. It just has to be running, and it has to do what you say it's going to do. That's all that matters. So technically, the tech stack does not matter, even though you know my opinions on it. The way you handle some of these issues and pull requests doesn't matter as long as your team agrees to it. I'm just trying to show you my insights on what I would do. Okay. Here's my expectations. I always like to tell you what I expect. Every single person, not every team, I'm talking about every individual person. I challenged you on Monday to have a pull request by today. No matter how small that is, it could have been, adding a home page that just says welcome on it. That could have been that simple. I don't care what it is, but I wanted every single person to complete a task and submit a pull request. So if you are a person that has not done this, that is your top priority as fast as possible to grab a task. Most of you should have a task or issue, push your code, do a pull request. And then what I am suggesting you guys do is between every Monday and Thursday, have at least one PR. So that means you grabbed another issue, you're working on it. And again, you do not have to use Monday and Thursday as your reference dates. Some people might grab a bigger one that, if they start on Monday, it might take them till Friday to do. Some people might grab a smaller one that might only take them a day and they're done by Tuesday. Some people might have, they might work 12 hours at their day job on Tuesday. So they're not going to get anything done on Tuesday, but then they'll work on Wednesday. You guys have to work around your schedule. But on the other hand, as a general rule of thumb, you need to be doing 2 tasks a week. Doing pull requests, getting used to this. All right. I cannot remember the exact wording. File structure, in my opinion, file structure does count. You have to set up your stuff. But that should have, to be honest, that should have been done kind of today. And then by Monday, you're actually creating actual features. But I want you to work as a team. So the reason why I say everyone, because I felt like on some teams, there is one person that has done all of the commits for setting up the structure. And so the other people have not created a pull request yet. That's what I want to avoid. I want every single person to feel involved, work on code, commit code. So, okay, so by next Thursday, so by a week from today, there is a checkpoint. I think Hal just posted that. So these are things, can give an overview of what their project is. That has nothing to do with actual code or actual functionality. You have to know the purpose. Every single person, these are individual. This is not as a group. You can talk as a group, but you will have to communicate this individually. Can you give an overview of what your project is and why? If you've made at least 3 commits to the project repo. Now here's where their expectation and my expectation is slightly different. And mine is not as hard of a rule as theirs. Theirs is more of the rule. Mine's more of a guideline and setting you up for success. I would even go to not only 3 commits, but 3 tasks individually, 3 tasks. Remember, if you've already done your one for today, you're going to do another one by Monday, and you're going to do another one by Thursday. So in my opinion, a really good goal for you is to have 3 pull requests done by next Thursday. Remember, some of them can be small. I don't care how big or small. You're just wanting to commit your code and push your code up as many times as possible. Has built the foundation and started implementation of at least one project feature. As a team, you should have the structure pretty much done today. If you don't have a structure done today, that's your first goal. Many teams do have a UI and an API or a front-end, back-end folder, because I've looked for that. So you've had the structure kind of there. And so now you guys are working on your at least one feature, which is perfect. Talks through the other features that they plan, that they individually are going to probably do for the project, and then how it'll impact the project. That you'll have to talk to your team so that you guys understand what each individual is doing. That's, again, another Monday and Thursday thing. Talks through the steps they will take to complete development on the features they have started. So that's still keeping it very general. You don't have to have it coded, but you need to know what you're coding. I know some of you are worried about being rejected. Don't worry about that. Just keep working. Assume everything's good until you find out otherwise. And to be honest, I'm going to be very honest. If they reject something of yours, because I don't have any insight into that, if they reject anything of yours and you don't know quite why or how to pivot that, reach out to me. I mean, your IAs are obviously there too, but I have no problem looking into if you have developed code and you're developing this feature and then all of a sudden it gets rejected, which I don't think it will, but if it does, let me know and we will work together on getting you reconciled as fast as possible. So do not stress about that. That's my go-to. Do not stress about being rejected. We'll take care of that. All right. Look at that. We're over time as usual. I can't ever do anything in a short amount of time. This will be short though. As I go into the next step, definitely keep asking questions. I thought that said that I was trying to find one that. Oh, here's the other thing. I'm gonna keep doing this because I want to light some fires here. This is all the groups, right? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show the people that has done last push. Now, this is not. This is what this means is on even a feature branch. This is not push to main. This is push to any code at all. This is the list and the order of last push. So if you're one of the top 5 people here, hopefully you guys weren't pushing during my lecture, but this says that this team pushed 1 minute ago. Who's that? So you're pushing while I'm talking, man. I'm just joking there. But this is the list. This is the list. So this team pushed 1 minute ago, right? So these people have been pushing here recently. I'm also going to show the bottom ones. Look at these groups. Oh, last week was the last one. So if you're in the bottom and you need help at all, let me know. I'll reach out. I think some of you have realized that I think I found some people near the bottom last time and I popped into their studio or their work time on Monday. That's what I'm going to do. So if you're on the bottom of the list, I will probably pop into your work time to make sure to answer any questions. This isn't just to it's not to more or less throw you under the bus, but it is to maybe light a fire that I am paying attention, that I care, that I don't want people to have their last push a week ago. I want this last team on Mondays and Thursdays to have their last push within 24 hours. So I will be looking. I will be calling people out. We need to make sure that we're doing what we need to. And really, I want to be there if you have questions. So done. Yeah, there we go. I don't see my. Right. So here's some amazing code right here. So here's my application. We've already talked about this before. This is my to-do app. I think I showed this on Monday, but I've added a nav bar with routing. So whenever I do home, it makes this component. When I do the to-do, it still does my to-dos like I did before. And then my user profile, I made this, this was horrible, but I just made a placeholder. That's all this is. Just so you guys can see that this is routing. Now, what I want to show you So key things that I look for, I open up my console, and as I click buttons, do you see how there's no errors? Sometimes in your front-end development, you will still have errors, but everything works perfectly fine. Some errors because of tech debt, meaning like you brought in a module that's too old, that doesn't match with a newer dependency or an older dependency. Sometimes you'll get errors, and even in production level environments, some people weigh the cost of redoing that module versus just letting it run as long as it works. For you guys, again, if you have an error over here that you either don't understand, or if you want me to say it's okay that it's there, let me know. But in general, you want to make sure that you don't have any errors over here. So if you need help, let me know. The other thing is, I think, I don't know if you remember, but way back when I said that you can actually do developer tools of React. So there's React developer tools. If you just Google it, you can do that. But this tells me all of the components that I have right here, including my routes. So it's saying that it's right now it's doing my user profile, but if I do my to-do, it actually brings in my to-do page with my to-do tables with all of my to-do rows with keys. If I do my home, it tells me my home page. So this sometimes helps people. I'm just throwing that out there to help. Whenever you do these, oftentimes these props are what you really care about anyway. So if I do this to-do table, you can see that my props are the to-dos and they're individual to-dos right here. Just throwing extra tools out there. All right. How did I actually route this? There are, from my research, again, I do not develop with React on a daily basis, so I am not an expert. From my research, depending on your version of React, they have changed how they do routes and routers. So what I say here, if you say that you looked up a YouTube page and you found a way different way to do it using slightly different things like a switch, I remember a couple of years ago, I used switches. And that was the vocabulary that I used for this, was a switch. Whenever I looked up the newer documentation, I think they got rid of those, maybe. So I'm just saying that all to preface, you will find different documentation. Make sure you look up the version that you're using. That's where React gets a little crazy. So in my nav bar, I created links. Yeah, even, yes, in one. I'm just showing you my way. You do not have to do it this way. Some of you have already done routes and don't. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, if you already have routes in there and it's working, do not think that you have to change to my way. As long as it works, it works. So in my code, I did not change a single thing to the back end. Everything was in the front end. I'm just going to close all these. I'm going to make this bigger so you guys can see. All right. So the first thing that I did was I went and I did, I made sure, I can't remember when I did this because it was already there whenever I was doing this. You want to make sure that these dependencies, so you're going to do like npm install React DOM and or npm install React router DOM. Those are the dependencies that I'm using with this. And these are the versions, but these should be the newest versions just because I didn't put a version on there, so it should have just pulled these. So you're going to install these things. And I can't remember if one actually installs the other or not. I think React DOM is already there from React. So I think it might be just this router DOM. Google it. But you will have to install something. And then what I did was, remember, I commented out these auth things. I will show you this later with the login on what I did. But what I did was I created a router, but the router is actually a browser router. I Googled this. So this says import browser router as router. I could have, I'm just going to do this. I could have done this, and it would have worked just fine. So that means the same thing. Again, I copied and pasted from people, and they suggested using browser router as router, but you can use it as its native component name. Inside the browser router, I put the nav bar. Now this is my nav bar. So remember, that's a component that I didn't make it last time. I made a nav bar component. And this nav bar is just a navigation. Remember, class name, I'm using Bootstrap. So I just Googled some Bootstrap things and put them up here. And then I created links with a to. Remember, the class name is my CSS. So you don't have to have that for functionality. That's for CSS. But a link is the component name. Anytime you bring in a new component, you have to say where it's from. So I'm importing the link from that router DOM. I have my link. This is my name that I'm displaying, my text that I'm displaying. And whenever I click on it, it's going to go to the to. Again, I'm trying to show some of these links only if they're authenticated. That's why they're greened out here. But remember, I don't have this working. So ignore that for right now because it's not working. But this is a high level of what you would do. You would say JavaScript. I don't know if you guys remember, but this curly brace means that you can use JavaScript directly in the code. I'm going to say JavaScript. I'm creating a variable that says is authenticated, yes or no. And if they are, it's going to do this, because remember the question mark is true. If this is true, do this. And then the colon says if false, and I would just create a blank thing there and not allow them to see that. Question that came in: should we not be doing our own CSS? Should we just use all Bootstrap? It's a personal thing. I will always be very upfront. I hate CSS with a passion. So any way that I can not do it, I will find the most efficient way possible not to write CSS. I am not suggesting that everybody falls that way. If you like more front-end development, please implement your own CSS. You got to follow your passion. If you're willing to put in the work, do it. But that's not me. Repo posted somewhere in Discord. I think I posted it in the chat actually last time. I will post my repo. Or Lori, if you already have it, if you want to post it in Discord or post it there, sure. All right, somebody else already got it. You guys can post that in Discord. I have not pushed this stuff up yet, this link router stuff. I have pushed on my other stuff. I can't even give you a timeline on when I'll push this up, to be honest. But again, I Googled all of this. Like I literally just typed in the keywords of React Router DOM. I knew that I needed this, React Router DOM, and I more or less said, give me examples that use this. And then I copied and pasted from other people's repos. And that's what I'm trying to tell you is the high level overview. A link is a link. That should make sense. And you just go to this thing. Now, these twos have to be set up in your routes. So my nav bar has links, but then my routes are right here. These do not display anywhere. They don't display. What they do, not as a whole. What this does is it says, if I'm on the path, if my URL at the top, if my URL is just a slash, the element that I want to show is my homepage element. If it's the to-do, do the to-do page. If it's the slash user profile, show this. So again, if I go to this says, if I go here and I just type in the slash to-do and hit enter, it'll go to my to-dos. If I type in the slash user profile, it'll go to my user profile weirdness that I have here. So this is telling it, when you see this in your path name, do these components. Now I'm curious what this one does. Okay, so this does React Router DOM. Yeah, this does. Okay, do you see how I said that I brought in the browser router, the routes? Here's all the routes. See there you go. I think that was Zach. Zach posted that thing. Perfect. And then what you'll do here is, this is your layout component. That's a component that you built, like a normal component. So that's what these are. And then to do your nav bar, you do links. So there it is right there. So this is the most simplistic version. I would, Zach, you might want to post that in the Discord channel so we have it afterwards. Yeah, you guys are creating all of these resources, though. I want after this meeting, so put it in Discord somewhere so we have it. And then Christina, you asked a question. Create context for the login and auth. Yes, that is my suggestion to do. So Google that between now and Monday, and then Monday we can maybe, if I have time, go over it. And create context is not only for auth. So if you think that you Google create context and it doesn't talk about auth at all, that's correct. Create context is a context. It's more or less a wrapper that you can store parameters or variables in, and then you would wrap your other components in it. So what I did here, this auth provider actually, my auth provider is using a create context in it. So I'm wrapping a context around everything. So everything lives in between here. So everything in between here will have access to this context. That's how that kind of works. Yeah. There's more to that whenever you actually implement it. So don't think it's just, oh, I put it here and it works. No, there's other, you have to implement it the way that it wants it to, but yeah. I'm glad somebody came up with this. I always think that W3 Schools is more for vanilla JavaScript, but I didn't realize they actually have a React tutorial. I've never seen the React stuff here, so I might have to look at that. Fine. Ooh, good question. No, your routes do not need to match your controllers in the back end. So your routes are only what it's binding. We actually call this binding. What it is binding is this path to be this React component. So this right here has nothing to do with my backend. It's only when this URL is display this component, whatever that is. And remember, my home page is just this generic welcome the to-do app, your to-do application, that it says these two things. So when I go to mine and I hit my home, it has your to-do application, welcome the to-do application. Where you put your backend, and this is where I would look at my actual code in that repo. I made that in my to-do service. In this URL, the combination of this with it, this is what I coded. So it says localhost 8080, that's my Java backend service, and /API/to-dos. That is what I did right here, /API/to-dos. I know that's kind of small, but you're just going to trust me that that's what the text says right there. So this has to match this. And this is in my to-do service. So I would create like you can see here, I was already creating a user service. That was going to be my more or less login service, but I was going to do my login, registration, and user profile stuff all in the same service, and then create my backend. I haven't created it yet, but I was going to create a user controller, and the user controller was going to handle my login, registration, and any user information I wanted. And then there was another great question that somebody asked me, I can't remember where. Well, on login, I just care about username and password. On registration, they're setting up their username, password, email, first name, last name, phone number, whatever you want. On the registration, they're setting up more. So how do I do like the modeling of all of that stuff? And I would suggest creating either a model or what we would consider a DTO, so a data transfer object. The difference between a true model and a DTO is that models are the @entity, so those are going to be stored in the database, where a DTO is what you're either bringing in or sending out just to transfer data, but that object does not identically match your entity that you actually want to save. Such as my login, I don't want to save just username or password. What I want to do is I want to save the whole entire user. So my user model is going to be username, password, first name, last name, email address. Let's say it's those 5 things. So in my models, I'm going to create a user model. But when I log in, I don't need them to send me the first name, last name, and email address. I just want to know their username and password. So I might create a login DTO that only has those 2 things. And then that login DTO could then map to a user. So then what I would do is I'd actually call the user repository and don't look up the whole user. I'm just going to look up and make sure that the username and password is good. So the DTO is something you do not save, you just use, where an actual model you actually save and use. It is very similar to your auth and login for Unit 2. Yes. If you remember, I don't think we saved those models. We didn't make them an @entity. The @entity is not a DTO. A DTO is just leveraging a separate model, but not all of it. And actually, like the DTO with the registration, we don't need to save the password twice, so we can have a username, password, and then secondary password or a verification password. And so the DTO you would actually pass in 2 passwords to it, and the DTO would use the controller to check it. But I'm not going to save both of them. I'm only going to save one. So that's another reason to use a DTO, is extra information. Anyway, started talking a little long. Where do sessions come in? I'll have to think about that one. I think I got away with not really using sessions, and I just using that user context. I always had their email or their username, however you do that, and then you can always send that in. So if I'm trying to look up all their to-dos for that user, I can always send in their username every single time, and then just use that in my query to only give them back their to-dos. That's one way to do it without sessions. Well, I know how to do it with sessions, but I don't know how to explain it in a way, in a 30-second way. So sessions are saved as a cookie. Yes. Now you guys, I'm going to have to type up actually how to explain that. Because I could hammer it out, but I can't explain it very well right now. I'll do that for Monday or Thursday. Because with my to-do app, if you guys go to, see, these are all on the front side. Whenever you set up session in the back end, there'll be that J session. I don't know if you remember that from Unit 2. We actually did a little bit of sessioning, and there was a J session right there. And then that J session is always sent with the request. and then that request always has a user tied to it once you log in. So maybe I'll do it that way. That might be a better way. To be honest, I was trying to think of the fastest way to get you guys to use user management as fast as possible. Yeah. Is it possible to connect the whole backend with a single service layer in the front end? Possible and should you are two different things. If you want to have just a backend service, where's my VS Code? If you want to have just a service that says backend service, and then you're going to have a fetch to dos, an add to do, a fetch user, add user, register user, all of those things all in one, you can. If somebody from an enterprise level looks at your code, though, they will not want to hire you. They want things separated, clean. To be honest, people like whenever your code base right here, I'm going to throw out for your guys' project, your basic code should not be more than like 100, 150 lines. If you have one file that's thousands of lines, you should be able to split that up. So. Zach, when you're talking about the session, your browser would have a JSession ID, and this value would get passed. And you are correct that my IntelliJ, upon receiving that, would check to make sure that that JSession is a valid one, meaning has it timed out already? Has it been 30 minutes and they have to re-authenticate, whatever that is? And then if it's a good valid JSession ID, then that comes with information, usually the user, if you set up your user in your session. So then it would just know your user and you wouldn't actually have to pass your user through. Because you guys remembered that, that might be the route that I go whenever I show my other stuff. But I actually did forget that we used JSession in Unit 2. I was trying to figure out a way not to because I forgot we used it. We've learned so much in this class. Fine. Any other things? So a couple comments and then answers. So when you say that you've learned so much that you can't remember anything, that is very typical. That's why learning technology is not about learning syntax. It's not learning about the small stuff. Yes, that's how you implement it, but you should be learning how to Google the implementation, just like that W3 Schools. Like that is a perfect example of, do you need to understand everything about React Router to be able to implement it? No, there are resources out there for the implementation at that level. The problem is you need to understand what routing is in general. You need to understand that there's even React Router out there. You need to understand, when it says linked, you have a basic comprehension of what that means. So whenever when we are all said and done here, hopefully you have a bigger picture of how web development works, the bigger pictures of the vocabulary words to be able to Google the implementations, but you will never be expected just to be able to implement this just sitting down and doing it. You will always have to Google it. You'll always forget something. You have to soak in the bigger picture stuff. And then there was other. All right, and then there was a question: J session and JWT the same thing? Absolutely not. J session is a Java session. It's a key value of your session number matches with some information on your Java server, and that's how it connects. Is you pass in your J session ID, and whenever you pass that into your backend, it knows who you are. JWT, and what's weird is it's, I think, pronounced Jot. I don't know, but it's an actual token. So it actually sends your front end key claims, is what they call them. So it sends claims. It sends your token refresh number. It sends a bunch of other. It actually sends a JSON object to your front end. So it's different. A JWT is not Java. It's actually a JavaScript thing, or it's a JSON thing. It's not a Java. So no matter if I was working in C# or whatever language, Python, whatever, you can still use a JWT in any language. But a J session is your Java session, your Spring. It's usually a Spring application that uses J session. I think I answered everything that was there. Any other? I guess Lexi's leading the lecture on Monday. And then typically from the rest of the class, Lexi will be leading on Monday. I'll be leading on Thursday. You guys know me well enough that I don't know if I'll be able to stay quiet every Monday. So you might hear me also on Monday. My goal is to set up some kind of auth service. Now that the J session's been brought up, I do think I'm going to go the J session route. Again, I've implemented all of this in Angular. I'll just steal that and bring it over to React. Does this have use context right here? Global state, here we go. Oh my goodness. The use state is more local, and then the use context is more global. This is how I would do user set user. There we go. But then the solution, create a context, user context.provide. This is exactly, do this. Fine. If nobody else has any questions, I'll let you guys go. I think if I heard right, your studio is just working on your project. Again, I'm going to reiterate, if you have not individually created a pull request, you need to do that as fast as possible. Find something that is doable in a day. Get it done in a day, make a pull request. If you've already made a pull request and already went through that process, definitely start looking at features that you definitely want to implement. But I think just creating your first pull request is a huge celebration. So go ahead and get it done as fast as possible. Have your teammates review that and help you through that. So everybody needs to do that as fast as possible. And then your goal is by Monday, have another pull request. I'll let you guys go. I guess I need to stop the recording.